It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, a chance to unwind and bond with my husband's family in the serenity of a beachside resort. But what should have been a dream vacation quickly turned into a nightmare. From the moment we arrived, something felt off. At the very first dinner, my husband's parents insisted I sit at a separate table. I tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, but as the days passed, the cold treatment only grew more obvious. Little did I know, this family vacation would be the beginning of a much deeper struggle. One that would force me to confront not only my place in this family, but also my marriage. What happened next left me questioning everything. It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation. My husband and I had been planning it for months, sunny beaches, long walks, and laughter-filled dinners. I had imagined the warm evenings spent under the stars, with everyone gathered around the table, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. But from the moment we arrived at the hotel, something felt off. The first evening, as we walked into the dining room, I noticed the awkward silence that fell over the group when we entered. My husband's parents, usually so warm and welcoming, looked at me strangely as if they weren't sure where to place me. Then, without any explanation, they directed me to a table at the far end of the room, alone. I tried to smile, thinking it was just an innocent mistake, but it didn't feel right. There was a coldness in the air, and I could feel my pulse quicken as I sat at that table, away from everyone. It was just dinner, I thought, nothing to make a big deal about. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling that this vacation, this once-in-a-lifetime trip, wasn't going to go as I had imagined. The first dinner came and went without much fanfare. I sat at my separate table, feeling a little like an outsider, but I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe my husband's family was just adjusting to the idea of me being there, especially since this vacation was a rare opportunity for everyone to gather. I told myself it was nothing personal, but as the days passed, the discomfort only grew. The next morning, during breakfast, I tried to join the group at the main table, but the space was tight, and the atmosphere felt tense. No one said anything, but there was a noticeable shift whenever I entered a room. Conversations would abruptly pause, or the topic would suddenly change when I approached. It wasn't just one awkward moment, it was a pattern. My husband seemed to be caught between his family and me, offering vague reassurances that everything was fine, but I could see the unease in his eyes. He didn't say much, but I could tell he noticed the divide too. The more I tried to be part of the group, the more distant they became. It was as if I was invisible to them. And yet, despite all of this, no one ever addressed the elephant in the room. Not my husband, not his parents, no one. It was as if they all agreed on a silent, unspoken understanding. The more I tried to make sense of it, the more frustrated I became. It felt like I was fighting to be seen, but I wasn't sure why I was being pushed away. By the third day of the vacation, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The exclusion at meals was becoming unbearable, and the subtle coldness in my interactions with my husband's family was starting to chip away at my patience. I had always tried to maintain a strong relationship with them, but this wasn't just a misunderstanding. There was something more to it, something unspoken. One evening, after a long day of sightseeing, I finally decided to confront my husband. We had been walking back to our room when I stopped in my tracks, unable to keep quiet anymore. "I need to know what's going on," I said, my voice low but firm. "Why are they treating me like this? What did I do wrong?" His face immediately tightened. I could see the inner turmoil in his eyes. He looked around, almost as if to check if anyone was listening, and then he hesitated. For a moment, there was silence between us, the kind that feels like it lasts forever. "I don't know how to say this," he began, his voice trailing off. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "It's just, my family, they've always been a bit traditional, you know? They never thought I should marry you. They thought I could do better." I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach as his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had always known there were a few raised eyebrows when we first got together, but I never imagined it ran this deep. The fact that my own husband had never told me this made the sting even worse. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaky now. "Why didn't you defend me?" "I didn't want to make things worse," he admitted, his eyes avoiding mine. "I thought if I just kept the peace, it would blow over. I didn't realize it would affect you like this." I wanted to say more, but the words caught in my throat. The realization that the person I loved the most was so passive about my feelings was a punch I hadn't seen coming. Was he really that afraid of his family's judgment? Or was there more to the story? The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. I tried to shake off the conversation from the night before, but it kept replaying in my mind. My husband's admission had left a mark, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little support I had received from him in the past few days. The vacation, which was supposed to be a time of joy and connection, felt like a series of small, painful moments of rejection. We decided to join everyone for breakfast, though I wasn't sure how much more I could take. As we sat down at the table, I tried to keep a smile on my face, hoping it would help smooth things over. But then, I overheard a conversation between my mother-in-law and one of the family friends. It was almost as if they thought I wouldn't hear them. "She's really quiet, don't you think?" my mother-in-law said, her voice dripping with a subtle form of criticism. "She's not as adaptable as we expected. I thought she'd fit in better with the family, but maybe she's just not the right match for him." The words cut through me like a knife. I tried to keep my composure, but my hands clenched under the table. They were talking about me as if I wasn't even there. I glanced at my husband, hoping he would notice, but he was too busy chatting with his dad to catch my eye. I didn't respond to the comment. Instead, I forced myself to eat, trying to ignore the pit growing in my stomach. The passive-aggressive remarks were starting to pile up, and they were no longer subtle. It wasn't just the way they treated me. It was the constant undertone of judgment that seemed to follow me everywhere. After breakfast, as we were walking around the resort, I found myself feeling more alone than ever. I hadn't been included in any of the plans for the day, and I could tell my husband was torn between spending time with me and keeping his family happy. It was clear now, he wasn't ready to stand up for me, and his family wasn't ready to accept me. Was this the family I had married into? And was I going to have to accept this silent exclusion forever? The days blurred together, each one feeling like a repeat of the last. The sting of those casual, hurtful comments lingered in my mind, and the coldness from my husband's family seemed to grow with each passing hour. Every meal was a reminder that I wasn't truly part of their world. My attempts to join in conversations felt futile, as if they were all speaking in a language I didn't understand. I couldn't figure out why, but it was clear now, I was being shut out. My husband, despite his earlier admission, didn't seem to know how to handle the situation. He still smiled and made polite conversation with his family, but he was avoiding eye contact with me more and more. Every time I tried to speak up or ask a question, the conversation would shift, and I was left sitting there, awkwardly, like a stranger in my own marriage. The worst part, it wasn't just about the seating arrangements or the passive-aggressive comments anymore. It was about the feeling of being invisible. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had acknowledged me with kindness. My husband seemed to be caught between wanting to please me and his family's expectations, but the longer this went on, the more I felt like an afterthought in his life. One evening, after another strained dinner, I found myself standing on the balcony of our hotel room, looking out at the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore should have been calming, but instead, it only reminded me of how isolated I felt. I loved my husband, more than anything, but I couldn't help but wonder, was I ever truly going to fit into this family? And why was he allowing it to happen? When he came out to join me, I didn't turn around right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us. I could feel him standing there, hesitating as if unsure whether to address what was clearly hanging in the air. "I can't keep doing this," I finally said, my voice softer than I intended. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. I feel like I don't even exist to them. And I feel like I'm losing you in the process." He took a deep breath, stepping closer but not saying anything for a few moments. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and careful. "I don't know what to do, honestly. It's like, they just don't accept us. They think I made a mistake by marrying you, and I hate that. I'm stuck in the middle, and I don't know how to fix it." I felt my frustration reach a breaking point. "You don't fix it, you stand up for me," I said, turning to face him. "You stand up for us. That's all I need." For the first time in days, he met my gaze. But instead of the apology I had hoped for, I saw guilt, a deep, familiar guilt that said it all. He wasn't sure he could do that. And in that moment, I realized, it wasn't just his family who needed to change. It was him too. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of limbo. My husband and I had talked, really talked, for the first time that night on the balcony. But instead of bringing us closer together, it had only made things more complicated. The tension in the air was palpable. He had promised to try harder, to speak up for me, but I didn't feel his actions matching his words. We were still being seated separately at every meal, and still, no one bothered to even try to include me in their conversations. Every time I walked into a room, there would be that brief, uncomfortable silence before everyone carried on as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband would smile at me, but it didn't feel like the smile of someone who truly saw me. It felt like the smile of someone who didn't know how to fix what was broken. The worst part was that he kept telling me to be patient. "It's just their way," he'd say. "They'll come around. Give it time." But how much time could I give? How much longer could I keep pretending I wasn't suffocating under the weight of their coldness? Each day felt like a test of my patience, but I was running out of it fast. One night, as we sat by the pool after dinner, I found myself lost in thought. The warm air was thick with humidity, but the heat wasn't what was making me sweat. It was the weight of my own decision. I had come to a realization that terrified me. I had two choices now. I could either continue to swallow my feelings, keep enduring this invisible treatment, and pretend it didn't hurt. Or I could confront the truth that maybe I wasn't as important to my husband as I had thought. I had given everything to this relationship, but how long could I keep investing in something that was slowly draining me? Before I could decide, my mother-in-law came over. She stood in front of me with a smile, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you're enjoying your time here," she said, her voice as sweet as honey, but with an underlying edge. "It's always nice to have a change of scenery, isn't it? I'm sure you appreciate how much effort we've put into making sure everything goes smoothly." I tried to smile, but it felt forced. "Thank you," I said quietly, unsure what else to say. She continued, her words pointed, though disguised with politeness. "Of course, it's important to know where you belong, isn't it? Knowing your place in a family is key." I wanted to respond, to snap back and demand why they were treating me like I didn't belong, but I didn't. I bit my tongue, knowing that doing so would only make things worse. But inside, I was seething. This was it, the moment when I had to decide. Did I continue to fight for a place in a family that clearly didn't want me? Or did I fight for myself and walk away from the constant rejection? As my husband joined us, I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes met mine, but there was no reassurance there. No certainty that I was the one he chose. Only the same helplessness I had seen in him all week. And for the first time, I realized I couldn't wait for him to fix this. I had to make the choice myself. The rest of the vacation felt like a blur. I went through the motions, eating meals alone, joining in on group activities half-heartedly, and smiling when necessary. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut that something had irrevocably changed. The more I tried to fit in, the more I realized I didn't belong there. It wasn't just the way my husband's family treated me. It was the way he treated me, or rather, the way he failed to protect me. The tipping point came one evening, during the last dinner before we were supposed to head home. We were sitting at the usual table, me at the far end, isolated and alone, and I watched as my husband laughed with his parents and their friends, completely at ease. He was acting like everything was normal. He hadn't once tried to join me, or even asked if I was okay. I felt the tears threaten to spill over, but I forced them back. This wasn't about crying, it was about standing up for myself. Suddenly, one of his family friends, a woman I had never quite warmed up to, leaned over to me, a glass of wine in her hand, and said with a sickly sweet smile, "You know, it's such a shame. You're so much prettier than we expected. If only you'd been more adaptable. You'd fit right in, don't you think?" Her words sliced through the air like a blade. I stared at her, speechless. For the first time in days, I felt my anger bubble up inside me, hot and uncontainable. The years of trying to fit in, the countless moments of swallowing my hurt, all of it came crashing down in that instant. I stood up abruptly, knocking my chair back in the process. The room fell silent. My husband's eyes snapped to mine, his face filled with confusion and a hint of concern. "Enough," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "I've had enough." Everyone stared at me, but I couldn't care less. I could feel the heat of their stares, but I refused to let it stop me. I turned to my husband, locking eyes with him. "I've been trying so hard to be a part of this family, to make things work, but you—" I pointed at him, my chest tightening with emotion. "You've done nothing to make me feel welcome. You've sat by, watching me get humiliated and isolated, and you've done nothing to defend me. This isn't just about your family. This is about you." His face paled, and for a moment, I thought he might speak, but he remained silent. I could feel the tears welling up, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I turned away from the table, walking toward the door. I could hear the murmurs behind me, but I didn't look back. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I finally let the tears fall. I didn't care who saw anymore. I had given everything I had to this marriage, to this family, but I wasn't going to keep sacrificing my self-respect. I didn't know what the future held, whether my marriage could survive this, or if my husband would finally wake up to the reality of what was happening. But in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. I was done waiting for someone else to change my story. I had to take control of my own destiny. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped away from the dinner table, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do next, but I couldn't stay there. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it so clearly wasn't. I walked around the resort, trying to breathe deeply and collect my thoughts, but everything felt like a whirlwind. As I made my way down a quiet path by the pool, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know it was my husband. He had followed me. He'd always followed me when I walked away like this, but it never felt the way it did now. This time, there was no comfort in his presence. There was just an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. "Wait," he called softly, and I paused but didn't turn. "Please, just let me explain." I finally faced him, my eyes red but my expression firm. "Explain what exactly?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but filled with every ounce of emotion I had been holding in for days. "Explain why you've let me be treated like this? Explain why you haven't done anything to stop your family from making me feel like an outsider? Explain why I had to stand up for myself when you were supposed to be the one doing that." He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. For a long moment, we stood there in silence, the weight of my words hanging between us. "I don't know what you want from me," he finally said, his voice strained. "I've tried, but every time I say something, it just makes things worse. I can't change the way they've always been, but I don't want to lose you. I never wanted any of this." His words should have meant something, but all I could hear were the empty spaces between them. How many times had I been here before, waiting for him to make a choice? How many times had I hoped that things would get better just because we loved each other? The truth was, love wasn't enough anymore. I needed someone who would fight for me, not just sit by and watch as I slowly faded away. "I'm not asking you to change your family," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm asking you to stand by me, to choose me. And if you can't do that, then I need to walk away. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not." The silence stretched out again, this time suffocating in its weight. I looked into his eyes, searching for something, anything that would tell me he was ready to make that choice. But all I saw was guilt and hesitation. He was torn between me and the family he had known his whole life. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't keep living in this emotional limbo. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "I don't want you to go, but I don't know how to fix this." "Maybe it's too late to fix it," I replied softly, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. "Maybe I've been waiting for you to wake up for too long." With that, I turned and walked away, not looking back. My heart was broken, but there was a strange sense of peace in knowing that I had finally stood up for myself. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't keep waiting for someone else to change my story. The next few days felt like a blur of emotions. I couldn't escape the feelings that weighed heavily on me, the quiet echoes of my confrontation with my husband still ringing in my ears. I had walked away, but that didn't mean it was easy. In fact, it was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done. I loved him, still, more than I could put into words, but love alone wasn't enough anymore. I needed respect. I needed support. And for the first time in our relationship, I realized I wasn't getting either. The rest of the family vacation came to an end in an awkward silence. My husband and I barely spoke. He would try to reach out, but there was always a wall between us, a barrier that had never been there before. The sting of that truth sat heavily in my chest, but I didn't regret my decision. I couldn't. I had done what I had to do for my own peace of mind, for my own dignity. As we packed up to leave the resort, my husband came up to me, his face filled with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "Can we talk?" he asked softly, avoiding my gaze. I paused, looking at him for a long moment. His eyes were filled with guilt, but that wasn't enough anymore. Guilt didn't change actions. "I don't know what there is left to say," I replied, my voice steady but with an underlying ache. "You didn't stand by me when it mattered. You let your family treat me like an outsider, and now we're at this point." "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been so blind. I should have fought for you, and I didn't. But I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything, please, just don't leave me." It was everything I had ever wanted to hear, yet it felt hollow. His words didn't erase the months of neglect, the constant feeling of being alone in my own marriage. It didn't take away the hurt I had felt, the rejection, and the realization that I had been waiting for him to change when I should have been protecting myself all along. "I need time," I said, my voice softer now but firm. "I need to figure out what I want. I can't keep living like this, but I also can't just forget everything and pretend it didn't happen." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand. I hope we can fix this somehow." I didn't respond. The truth was, I wasn't sure anymore if we could fix it. What did it mean to fix something that had been broken for so long? Could we truly rebuild what had been lost, or was this the end of the road? As I walked away to catch my flight, my heart felt heavy but resolute. I didn't know what the future held for my marriage, or if we would find our way back to each other. But what I did know was this. I had finally found my voice, and I wasn't going to lose myself again in someone else's story. The days after we returned home felt like an emotional reset. The house, which had once felt like a shared space filled with memories and laughter, now felt empty. I had come to terms with the fact that I couldn't stay in the same place anymore. Not just physically, but emotionally. Our home had been a reflection of everything I had ignored, all the things I had overlooked in the name of love. It was now a place where I had to face the truth. Things were different, and they might never be the same again. I gave myself time to process, to really think about what I wanted. I sought out counseling, not just for my marriage, but for myself. I needed to understand why I had stayed silent for so long, why I had let things go on for as long as I had. I needed to reclaim the strength I had forgotten I had. Slowly, I started finding myself again. I took up hobbies I had abandoned, rekindled friendships I had let slip, and focused on my career in ways I hadn't in years. I learned to enjoy my own company again, to rediscover the parts of me that weren't defined by being someone's wife or trying to fit into a family that didn't want me. And yet, in all of this, I couldn't ignore the lingering thought that kept tugging at my heart. What about him? What about my husband? We had barely spoken after I left the vacation. He had given me space, respecting my need to be alone. But after a few weeks, he reached out. He didn't beg. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He simply asked if we could talk. I agreed, though my heart was guarded. We met at a small cafe in town, a neutral space where we could be honest with each other without the weight of our home or the past hanging over us. As we sat across from each other, the silence between us was thick. His eyes were tired, but they still held that familiar warmth. For the first time in a long while, he looked at me as though he saw me, really saw me, and not just as his wife, but as a person. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice rough, "about everything. About you. About how I treated you. And I know it's not enough to just say I'm sorry. I should have fought for you. I should have been better, and I didn't realize how badly I was failing you." I listened quietly, feeling a mix of emotions. The apology wasn't easy to hear, but it was a start. He wasn't just apologizing for his actions. He was acknowledging how deeply he had hurt me. "I don't know what the future holds for us," he continued, his eyes locked on mine. "But I want to try. Not just for you, but for me too. I've been selfish, and I'm sorry. I want to rebuild what we've lost, but I know it has to come from both of us. It can't just be me trying to make it right. It has to be us working together." For a long moment, I sat in silence, weighing my options. I wasn't sure if I could trust him completely again, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go either. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," he said, sensing my hesitation. "I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you I can be the partner you deserve." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision before me. The truth was, I still loved him. But love was no longer enough. Trust had to be rebuilt, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. I needed to take it one step at a time. "I can't promise anything," I replied, my voice steady. "But I'm willing to try too. We'll see where it goes from here." He nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, it felt like a real conversation, honest, raw, and filled with the possibility of growth. As we parted ways that day, I didn't have all the answers. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to lose myself again, no matter what happened. Whether we stayed together or not, I had found my voice. And that was something no one could take away from me. As time passed, the future unfolded in ways neither of us could have predicted. We took things one day at a time, cautiously rebuilding trust and learning how to communicate in a way we had never done before. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick. There were moments of doubt, days when I wondered if I had made the right choice. But through it all, I never lost sight of one thing, my own worth. Over the months that followed, my husband made a genuine effort to prove that he could be the partner I needed. He worked hard to show me that he respected me, that he valued my feelings, and that he was truly committed to making things right. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough for me to begin to open up again, to let my heart trust him in ways I hadn't been able to before. The journey was far from over, but the foundation we were building felt different now, stronger, healthier. I had learned to stand up for myself, to make decisions that were in my best interest, and to never again allow anyone, not even the person I loved most, to silence my voice. Whether or not our marriage would last forever was something neither of us could predict, but I knew one thing for sure. I had come to understand my own strength. I had found my voice, and in doing so, I had learned to never settle for anything less than the respect and love I deserved. And so, as the story of my journey continues, I walk forward with the knowledge that no matter what, I am enough. I am worthy of love, respect, and peace. And most importantly, I am capable of shaping my own future. The journey, filled with pain, growth, and self-discovery, eventually led to a place of peace. The lessons learned about standing up for oneself, about love, and about the importance of self-respect were not easily earned, but they had shaped who I was becoming. My relationship with my husband, though still a work in progress, had changed. We had a long way to go, but there was a foundation now, one built on honesty, communication, and the understanding that love requires mutual respect. But more importantly, I had rediscovered myself. I had learned to love myself in ways I had never before understood. I had found strength in vulnerability and courage in the face of adversity. And in the end, that was the greatest gift I could have given myself. No matter how the story of my marriage unfolds, I will never forget the most important lesson of all. My happiness, my peace, and my self-worth are in my hands. And that is a story I will continue to write, no matter what comes next. The end.